In 1775, Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet stating that the freedoms of man can only be maintained by limiting the power of government. The pamphlet was called Common Sense. In 2015, it still is Common Sense.
I'm Elizabeth Smith.
I'm Mark Zaccaria. This is Common Sense. Welcome back. This week, we turn our attention from the operations of state government to some of the politics that go into instituting state government in the first place. State Representative Patricia Morgan will conduct an in-depth interview with newly elected chair of the Rhode Island Republican Party, Brandon Bell. Jeff Rickard will be by to talk presidential politics. As usual, Elizabeth and I will drop in at intervals to ask the question, are you kidding me? But first, an analytical review of some of the top stories in the Ocean State this week. Liz?
Thanks, Mark. Here's an update to a story we analyzed a few weeks ago here on Common Sense. Remember when I mentioned the failings of the Rhode Island business climate and 300 new jobs were moving to northern Kentucky? Well, now we know why there was no effort to retain this golden upstart. According to a Go Local Prov investigation, a public document request to the governor's office, Commerce Corporation, Providence Mayor's office, and Providence Economic Development officials found that none of them had a single meeting with Teespring in 2015. In response to one of Go Local Prov's requests for information, the Commerce Corporation responded. Specifically, you requested that Commerce Rhode Island provide you with the dates of meetings, who attended, and any written record of meetings between Commerce Rhode Island and or economic development officials with the company Teespring for the period of January 1st, 2015 to June 25th, 2015. Please be advised that after a review of its records, Commerce Rhode Island has determined that it does not have any records responsive to your request. Similar responses were returned from Governor Gina Raimondo's office, the office of Providence Mayor Jorge Elorza, and worse yet, one high-level economic development official admitted he had never heard of Teespring. Unquote. Well, when your philosophy, or better yet, state motto is nothing to see here, it comes as no surprise they miss the grand opportunities and shovel yet another fiscal fiasco like 38 Stadium into the laps of taxpayers. Before we continue with the news, let's hear from Senator Chris Adiano.
TV here again with Senator Chris Adiano. Senator, Bill S-17 addresses pensions and their exemption from taxes. Could you tell us a little bit more in depth about that, please?
Absolutely. First of all, I like to think of it in tiers. We were very fortunate this year, and it was very good to see a budget come together where we were able to exempt Social Security benefits up to $80,000 for the individual, $100,000 on a household. And that first layer, that first tier, helps the people who need it the most. The next tier is us looking to try and get rid of the taxation from the state on military pensions, because that's going to help us keep the military retirees in the state. These are people we don't want leaving because they've built a life here, they have families here, and by keeping them here, we gain a lot on the backside from their spending, from their time here, from living their lives here. And then lastly, we're keeping a lookout for getting rid of taxes on pensions in general. We don't want to be the state where nobody wants to retire anymore.
Common Sense TV back here with Senator Chris Adiano. Senator, you recently co-sponsored a bill, S-25, which was going to address the issue of the fuel tax in the state. Could you tell us a little more about that, please?
Well, thank you very much, Rowan. As the session has gone on, this has become an incredibly complex issue. As everyone knows, there's also issues of whether or not we should toll certain vehicles, such as trucks, to maintain the roads. There's also been the issue of increasing the gas tax. This has turned into a huge issue. At the core of it is the fact that Rhode Island ranks at the very bottom in conditions of its roads and its bridges. We have significant problems causing bridge closures at this point, and my biggest concern now is safety. Everyone agrees we have to do something. Now we have to find the right way to do it. If we increase the gas tax, we're significantly endangering our local gas stations, for whom almost everybody can simply go to other places. They can go across the border. But at the same time, we've talked about tolling, and this can have a very significant impact on our small businesses. Everyone who ships, everyone knows how much trucking plays a role in every small business. So there's the complexity of it. We have to find a way to find this funding and keeping in mind a good conservative is going to want to find it in the budget the way it is. Maybe we have a way of finding the cuts, as we did this year with Medicare and Medicaid, efficiently, not cutting services, finding ways to be more efficient in our budget.
Two stories in the news this week triangulate to a third that's gone unreported, in my opinion. First, Channel 12 ran a very light piece on the imminent depletion of the Social Security Disability Insurance Fund. That happens sometime next year. Federal lawmakers have resisted diverting Social Security retirement taxes into the Disability Fund following the dire warnings in 2012 that a Romney presidency would strip elders of their Social Security checks altogether. The real problem with the Disability Fund, however, stems from the fact that claims have more than doubled in recent years. Do you think the workplace has gotten twice as dangerous during that time? The other story I noted during the summer doldrums was a piece on the dramatic increase in the number of Rhode Islanders now qualifying as medical marijuana patients. According to the Providence Journal, 18 months ago there were 4,849 certified medical pot users, whereas today that number is 11,620. Well, that's well over a 100% increase in a year and a half. Is there a glaucoma epidemic that no one has told me about? So what do these two social data points have in common? To me, they are both economic stories, as the opportunities to work and support a traditional family have withered to the new normal of a sub-2% growth economy. The aimlessness that results from underemployment is a major factor in both these increases as I see it. The remedy? Fix the economy. We need to cut the income taken out of the productive economy to pay for bloated government. We need to cut onerous, unnecessary regulatory overhead so that business is free to earn. We need to promote manufacturing, something Rhode Islanders used to be pretty good at, so that we start creating wealth again. From that equity, we can expect to see opportunity arrive at every doorstep. But we can't wait forever. If we get too used to not being self-reliant, we will have a harder and harder time regaining that skill.
Well, Rhode Island, it's pay raises for everyone. That's if you're a well-connected political appointee of Governor Gina Raimondo. This past week it was announced that political appointees would be granted a 33% pay increase, all at a time when the state can't fund its current obligations. Their proposal garnered praise from both House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello and Senate President Teresa Paiva-Weed, stating that the salary increases she is proposing are reasonable. In response, GOP Chairman Brandon Bell had this to say, quote, "Taxpayers are in disbelief. Governor Raimondo has warned about Rhode Island's structural budget problems. She has implemented new taxes. She wants to impose new tolls. But Raimondo now thinks taxpayers can afford a 33% pay raise for highly paid political appointees. Is she serious?" The Raimondo administration has defended these double-digit pay raises for six-figure salaries by comparing the salaries in Rhode Island to the salaries of public officials in other states like Massachusetts. Chairman Bell responded by stating, "This is absurd." Maybe Governor Raimondo did not notice that states like Massachusetts are much larger than Rhode Island, and the department heads in these other states probably have greater responsibilities than Raimondo's political appointees in Rhode Island. If Raimondo truly wants to grow the economy, she should not focus on pay raises for appointees, but lower taxes for everyone. For now, the powers that be are waiting for this outrage to die down, then it's back to business as usual.
Thanks, Liz. Before we get started on Brandon Bell's plans for the grand old party here in Rhode Island, I think someone may be kidding us. Liz, do you think that's going on? Let's ask, shall we?
Hey, I'm Gladys. Are you kidding me? I just had to come on the show this week because I'm really excited about the 2016 presidential race. I mean, wow. Last week that guy, Zaccaria, was talking all about it. And then my daughter, Lexi, called me up and said, Ma, guess what? Sanders is running for president. And I said, what? Colonel Sanders is running for president? He just announced in front of the Burlington Coal Factory last week. Wow. Do you know what this means? Free coats and fried chicken for everybody. Plus, I bet I get a lifetime supply of those finger wipes. You know the kind you get at the KFC. You could clean your Obama phone after you have your free fried chicken dinner. Not for nothing, but he'll show that Hillary a thing or two. And look at this. I've already hit the streets walking all over the place for my buddy, Colonel Sanders.
Hey, you moron! Colonel Sanders died in 1980. It's Bernie Sanders!
What? Bernie Sanders? Who's that? Are you kidding me? Ah, forget about it.
What do I stand for? What do I stand for? Most nights I don't know anymore.
Hello, welcome to Common Sense. This is a program where we try to make sense of the policies that affect your life and come up with common sense solutions. And today we have with us the new chairman of the Rhode Island Republican Party, Brandon Bell. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Rep. Morgan.
This is a blue state, and today I want you to dispel some of the misconceptions people have about Republicans and what we care for and what we advocate for. Because a lot of people consider themselves to be Democrats without really knowing the issues or considering the alternative. We're the alternative, and I think we're a great alternative.
Absolutely.
But welcome to the ranks of chairman.
Thank you.
It's a tough job. I think a lot of people really don't understand what a chairman does. You want to tell them?
Sure. I'm still in the learning phase, and I baptism by fire, I think. But basically, I'm the party leader. I'm the chief fundraiser. I'm the guy that everybody complains to. I'm the face of the party, the voice of the party, and there's probably 10 or 15 other things that I'm supposed to do, all while practicing law 100 hours a week. So it's a volunteer position. It's a position that I know you've held, and you did a wonderful job at it in the earlier in the decade, the last decade. And to the extent that I stepped up to the plate.
You made me sound so old with that. The last decade, holy.
Well, it was like 2000-ish, you know. I stepped up to the plate, and in stepping up to do this, it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I want to get people involved. I believe in expanded opportunity. We're the opposition party. We need leadership in this state to, on the opposition side, to point out what the problems are with 70 years of one-party control up at the State House, but also to present solutions. And that's what we've been doing. I became chair March 26, 2015, and since then it's been quite a whirlwind. We have a number of issues. I almost like to say it's like political Christmas, because there are so many issues in which we could not only attack, but we could present what our solutions are. And in working with our awesome House caucus, all 12 of you have done such a great job this year. And I think we have a great working relationship. I think it's important to have a state party that supports its electeds, so that there are certain things that the electeds need from the state party, and it's a relationship in which we work together.
Let me just break in a minute.
Sure.
You talk about us being the opposition party. I like it to be more proactive than that.
Sure.
I honestly believe we're the party that's advocating right now for the average person in Rhode Island. And I know that that's always been the mantle that the Democrats have assumed, oh, we're here for the little guy. It's not how I'm seeing it. Every time I look at policies, it is the opposition party, the opposite of me, who's trying to get more money out of people's wallets, and is actually making it harder for the average family to just take care of their kids, pay their bills, have a good job. I think of us as the party right now who is advocating for the average family, the average person, trying desperately to make those changes in our state government and in our policies that take the boot off of everybody's neck, particularly our economy, so that average people can have a good life. Not just the political insiders, not just the groups who are being heard by leadership up there, but by just the people who just want to live their lives.
And, I agree with you 100%, and it's true. We may be looked at as the opposition party because we're such a small caucus in
We're the
both chambers.
pro-taxpayer party.
But we're the pro-taxpayer party. We believe in expanded opportunity. We believe in optimism of opportunity, and that's something that I bring to the table as chair. I'm very enthusiastic. I have a ton of optimism. The glass is always half full with me, and to the extent that I know that I'm climbing uphill, I realize that most people agree with what our policies are as Rhode Island Republicans. And
Absolutely.
so, in terms of what
And if they would look at that, they would be Republicans. But let's talk a little bit about the national politics, because that really colors people's perception
Sure.
of Rhode Island Republicans. It's in the news more. It's on television. It's right. People hear more
Yes.
about national politics than they might hear about what's happening at their school committee. I know you. One of your duties is to make sure that presidential candidates, and we have wonderful Republican candidates,
I agree with that.
Get a hearing here in Rhode Island. Tell us about some of the things that you see there at the national level.
Rhode Island is just as important as Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Florida, which are known as three of the swing states with respect to presidential politics. But Rhode Island is really important. We have a number of delegates. There's a way in which presidential candidates can excite not just the base, but just people who haven't yet paid attention to political issues.
Ronald Reagan was a Republican, right?
He was.
Did he win?
He won in 1984. He won Rhode Island. And speaking of Ronald Reagan, how did my interest in politics peak? In 1980, I was 8 years old, and I was watching Ronald Reagan stump against Jimmy Carter. And I got interested. I didn't know who my town councilman was when I lived in New Jersey back then. I didn't know who my state representative or state senator was. But that's what gets you interested in politics. So we have this deep bench on the Republican presidential ticket that every night we see on the news, regardless of who you're for. Every night you see this on the news. And then we have the probable candidate on the other side, Hillary Clinton, with a significant lack of accomplishment, or the other way around, she's done nothing. And so at the end of the day, let's look at that and say, well, we're in a deep blue state. This is where the fight is. This is where the candidate should be. The candidate should stop here on the way to New Hampshire. Say hello to the voters. This is where the fight is. And Hillary Clinton has been running for president for 10 years and running from scandal for 40. We should, it's not just an anti-Hillary thing. Let's look at how well our candidates are doing.
And I know neither you or I have taken a position on a presidential candidate. You can't.
Yeah.
Maybe someday I will. But look at our bench. We have Scott Walker, who reduced local property taxes in a big way in his state. We have Bobby Jindal, who really focused on making sure that we got great education to kids down, especially in New Orleans, right? We have Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio, who really have helped Florida be incredibly prosperous.
Absolutely.
Rick Perry, growing jobs in Texas. We wish we could have something like that. Yeah. And I know I'm going to miss somebody, so I'm going to stop there. I'm missing a bunch. But we have such a deep bench of men who, and ladies. And Carly Fiorina, what an American story. She started as a secretary and ended up as CEO.
Carly is extraordinarily impressive, and I had the opportunity to meet her several times. And while I can't take a position as state chair, she's such an extraordinary person. She has such an extraordinary story, and it really is something to look at. All 16 or 15 that are in the race right now.
American dream, American opportunity. I think that's what they all stand for.
Absolutely.
What are you going to do around the presidential election here in Rhode Island?
So one of my roles is at the RNC. I'm one of the 168 votes as a state chairman. And so really I coordinate with some of the presidential campaigns to make sure that they can get on our ticket. I get on the ticket here in Rhode Island. I coordinate to make sure that the delegates, I work with Leanne Senek and Steve Frias, our national committee woman and committeemen, to make sure that our delegates are taken care of in terms of the national convention. And most of my time is spent on state issues. By the same token, though, we don't ignore what's going on when we turn the news on every night with the federal issues.
Okay, well, it's going to be an exciting year.
Absolutely, it will, for the next year and a half.
Yes. All right, we're going to take a break right now. We're going to come back to talk about state politics.
Seems government planners work in rooms with no windows. How else could they so consistently miss what's going on in the real world? Are you kidding me? A case in point, right here in Little Rhodey, is the gleaming, brand new train station at Wickford Junction. It cost you and me more than $380 million to build the combined MBTA, Amtrak, and RIPTA facility. Now, 10 trains per day stop there en route to TF Green, Providence Station, and on to Boston and back. Projected ridership on the train was more than 10 times higher than what has actually occurred. You can imagine what that shortfall has done to the unit cost numbers estimators used to justify the expenditure. RIPTA ridership is virtually zero. Why? About a quarter of a mile away from the Wickford Junction station, there's another RIPTA park and ride lot. It's at the intersection of routes 2 and 102. Plenty of folks take the bus from that one, and there's no mystery as to why. That's the one with free parking. And it's going to stay that way because every time the idea is floated of combining both RIPTA operations at Wickford Junction, there's a political firestorm over the cost of daily parking in the gleaming, brand new parking garage alongside. It shouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that folks will do the thing that is most cost-effective and convenient for them. So when government planners consistently ignore that fundamental fact of economics, I just got to say it. Are you kidding me?
Welcome back to Common Sense, and today we're talking with Brandon Bell, the new chairman of the Republican Party here in Rhode Island. Brandon, we were just talking about the national politics, the presidential campaigns that are heating up now, and those are going to be exciting for the next year. But here in Rhode Island, we have some really significant issues that I think the people of Rhode Island really need to understand, get involved with. I obviously think we're on the right side of these. But one of the one that has a lot of potential to really hurt Rhode Island is the tolling proposal that the governor introduced a month before the end of session and said we must pass right there. I always think that every time they do that, that they are trying to stampede us into making bad decisions. Because if we turn it over and look at it, we're going to see all the chinks in that proposal. And there are plenty of them. I know that you got involved in a good way at the during the just prior to the budget hearing, when we were supposed to be including this tolling proposal. And I hope people understand they're talking about putting 17 to 20 tolling plazas all over Rhode Island, supposedly starting with trucks and never going any lower than trucks, but we all know better than that. But as just prior to the budget vote, a bridge was closed in Cranston. You want to tell us about it?
There's so much to say. But let me start by saying that I agree with you 100% that unfortunately what's happened is, it seems anyway, that Governor Raimondo, we all looked forward to new leadership after our last governor. And Governor Raimondo was so meticulous in 2011 with her pension reform. We may not agree with every aspect of it, but she was so meticulous in the way she handled that as the treasurer. Why is it that this toll proposal, which is over $1 billion, was introduced in such a hurried fashion?
It's $1.1 billion, supposedly, to get $500,000 to $600,000 worth of bridge repair. So we will be paying double.
Right. Just in borrowing costs.
Borrowing costs and gantry costs.
It's absolutely crazy. And what it made me think of when I started to see some of these proposals towards the end of the session by the governor is essentially that she is governing by crisis. It's like, let's find a crisis and let's alarm the voters and the taxpayers, and so that the legislators get pressured into passing an expensive and fleecing bill on the taxpayers. It's the fleecing of the Rhode Island taxpayers, really what it all comes down to. So starting with that and trying to figure out why it is that tolling, when she rolled it out, she didn't even know what she was going to have tolls on, why that was the right answer. And it culminated in several weeks of us constantly putting press releases out. Governor, why tolls? Why are you impacting the trucking industry? What is the impact on the trucking industry?
Yeah, the original proposal was for $100 million out of the trucking industry, and that was supposedly not going to hurt our economy. You can't take $100 million, you can't take $60 million from a portion of our economy and not expect it to impact all of us.
It'll impact every one of us, and as I heard one commentator say, it'll impact the price of a six-pack of beer. I mean, it will go down to just the average, everyday taxpayer, regardless of whether they drive an 18-wheel truck or own a trucking company.
You know what? I keep trying to remind people, hundreds of trucks go to the grocery store every week.
Absolutely.
Hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
The trucks can't absorb all that many millions of dollars of expense. That's going to get into your food, it's going to get into everything you buy.
And once those gantries are up, and this is the concern that any of us have, it's literally just changing the computer program, and it'll end up being the Toyota Prius that gets tolled. And we don't want to see that. And so recently, a bridge was closed, a bridge right outside the Speaker's office. The Speaker of the House's office, just down the road, the Park Avenue Railroad Bridge.
And it's a highly trafficked bridge.
And what was amazing about it was that it was the only bridge that was closed. There were no other bridges closed. Why was that bridge closed?
Just before the vote.
Just before the vote. Well, let's see, because it was going to be on the Senate's agenda and the House's agenda potentially that week. And so at the end of the day, it raises a lot of questions, and we agreed with the Speaker. The Speaker was adamant about that there needs to be an investigation. And so the Rhode Island Republican Party said,
very suspicious timing.
It's ridiculous.
Especially because it had been inspected just the fall before and found to be okay.
September of 2014. Don't tell me that from September 2014 to Father's Day, June of 2015, that there was that significant of a deterioration.
Yeah. What, 8 months?
8 months. And we're not saying that there is not a problem with our infrastructure, with our highways and our bridges. But again, as an attorney, I go to the experts when I need an explanation on engineering, when I need an explanation on accounting. I don't rely on my own opinion of what needs to be closed and what doesn't. And just today, I noticed in the newspaper this morning that several DOT employees were suspended. We don't know why. Mysteriously, they were suspended. So now it's a question of, is that related? And again, we're not conspiracy theorists here. This is really important because this shapes the way our governor and our Senate president and our Speaker of the House put things before the legislators to pass to burden the taxpayers. So it's really important that we figure out, why was that bridge closed? Was it to alarm people so that this $1.1 billion plan would be passed?
And it's kind of, again, the stampede.
Absolutely.
Act in haste, repent at leisure.
Repent at leisure, and let's alarm people, because this bridge is going to fall down tomorrow. So let's alarm people, and let's pass this plan. The Senate had no problem doing it. Thank goodness for several of our legislators up at the Senate who opposed it. But the Senate had no problem doing it, led by the majority leader, who is all about the trade unions. He's a $250,000 or so ahead of the labor unions. So at the end of the day, fortunately, you in the House.
And let me just correct that. I think I have a lot of sympathy for the workers in the construction industry. I want them to get the work. I want our bridges to be fixed. I do. I want them to be fixed.
As do I.
I don't think we have to borrow the money. And I don't think we should borrow it without giving the people of Rhode Island a chance to approve or disapprove. There's a lot of money that they're thinking of borrowing, and a lot of money we have to pay back.
And again, I don't want to be misunderstood on that. We agree that there needs to be a solution. We believe that the solution should include some type of pay-as-you-go out of our current budget.
There you go. They're now talking about $60 million that they're going to get a year from all of these tolling. That's less than 2% of our general revenues. And let me just explain that to our listeners. We have a state budget that's $8.7 billion. A good portion of that comes from the federal government, and another portion comes from Rhode Islanders. That's general revenues. So just the money that comes from us, it's less than 2%. 1.7% is what we would have to get. I am sure that there is 1.7% worth of waste, at the very least, that we could be using for bridge repair. We absolutely should not be looking at bonding. But you put in some access for public records. They kind of have stonewalled you. What are you going to do?
We're going to use the statute to enforce our rights under the Access to Public Records Act, and we're going to do that immediately.
Try to get to the bottom of it.
Absolutely.
Was this real or was it not?
Was it an alarmist activity?
Yes. All right. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Defining who is a Christian and who isn't by what they manufacture. Are you kidding me? Now, I realize this might be rather controversial, but there are many American Catholics out there that see a conflicted message and even hypocrisy in the following statement made by Pope Francis recently. People who manufacture weapons or invest in weapons industries are hypocrites if they call themselves Christian, said Pope Francis, according to jpost.com. As a Catholic myself, this left me in shock and confused. So let me get this straight. The people put in charge of your protection at the Vatican and anywhere you travel are unarmed, right? Right? The armaments made to provide you with that protection and funded by investors to keep the company open and you safe are made and funded by people you abhor. In America, we believe in the right to life is more than at conception. If someone decides to bring harm to me or a loved one in my home, I have the right to defend their life and mine. So if I choose to be a responsible armed citizen, does that make me no longer a Christian? Responsible protection as individual choice allows us to go and do what we feel is best in a time of crisis. Companies like Smith and Wesson and Glock and their investors exist to provide protection. In America, it is the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Second Amendment ensures that. So American Catholics everywhere, remember this. There is no right greater than the right to life that begins at conception and continues until God summons us to his heavenly home. Guns and God coexist. So Pope Francis, are you kidding me?
Today we're talking with Brandon Bell, who is the chairman of the Rhode Island Republican Party, newly elected, getting his feet underneath him in a really busy policy year.
Absolutely.
For Rhode Island, Rhode Islanders, our taxpayers. A lot of jeopardy out there for the taxpayers in this environment. And one of those issues of jeopardy is the moving the Paw Sox from McCoy Stadium down to the 195 land in Providence. This came out, I think, in February. The taxpayers, the legislature was told we had 60 days to say yes, and no was not an option. And that really took on a life. I know the party came out pretty quickly with an opinion. Do you want to tell us where the party stands?
Sure, yeah. So in February, when it was first recommended that we use that 195 land for a minor league ballpark, Steve Frias, our national committeeman, came out pretty strongly against it. Came out in using that land for pro-growth jobs, for the innovation economy that it was supposed to originally be used for.
It was supposed to be for year-round good jobs, you know, from entry level up to the CEO suite.
That's
and
exactly what it was supposed to be used for.
Not seasonal.
Not seasonal employment. And then fast forward about 2 months, I think it was mid-April, we found out that the deal that the Millionaires Club was coming up with, who the Millionaires Club bought the Paw Sox, as the audience knows.
You called them gazillionaires last time.
Yeah,
They're somewhere between millionaire and gazillionaire.
I always figure
they got a lot of money.
Let's understate it instead of overstating it. It's almost like Price is Right. You just come in a little under. Yeah, they have a lot more money than any of us combined. And at the end of the day, they said that, hey, we want the taxpayers to foot the bill. Help us. Let's subsidize the stadium. And so we came out immediately that there was a squeeze play on the taxpayers. And we made a comparison, which got a lot of press attention, to Curt Schilling fleecing the taxpayers in 38 studios. And why would we then, if we got fooled by a pitcher, why would we get fooled by an entire team? And it really is a comparison that's a fleeting comparison, but it makes a heck of a lot of sense.
I immediately put in a bill.
That's right, you did.
That's right, that would say that the people would have a right to vote.
And where did that go?
To further study heaven. But yeah, in my opinion, the people, this is a huge investment. They talk about $120 million. It is much more than that. It is infrastructure changes. It is tax abatement. The whole package is well over $200 million, maybe $250 million. And when you spend that kind of money, I think the people have a right to approve or reject.
They do, and Rep, one of the other things I would say about that is just the obvious. Why would we move a ball team, a great team, by the way, 5 miles down the road? Don't fact check me on that because I haven't done the actual.
You haven't flown?
I haven't flown there. Just to take away what has become such a great institution in the city of Pawtucket.
Everybody knows McCoy.
Of course they do.
They really do. It's in the fabric of Rhode Island.
It is, and I was there recently picking my daughter up. My daughter had a band concert before one of the games, and I could see the folks sitting on the grass, and these people, it's in the fabric of Pawtucket, it's in the fabric of Rhode Island. Why would we use the 195
Want to spend $250 million to move it to really valuable land in Providence?
Right. It doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't to me either. I know when Mr. Skeffington was first talking about it, I was listening to the radio, and he was talking about they were going to use all private money, but they were going to need a lease from the state. And right away, bells went off for me because, at that point, the Republican Policy Group, we were studying the Convention Center Authority, and we had discovered that the state had signed a lease, so it was Governor Sondland at the time, without the people knowing about it, without the people approving. The governor had signed a lease with the Convention Center Authority, which is a quasi-public, and that lease basically said, spend whatever you want, don't worry whether you make a profit, because the taxpayer will always pick up the tab for you, and we'll call it a lease. Well, the same person, Mr. Skeffington, was involved at the Convention Center Authority at the very time those leases were being signed. And now he was talking about a lease for the Paw Sox Stadium. And I remember being in the car saying, oh my gosh, right? Look at what's coming down on the taxpayers in Rhode Island. This is something that we can't afford to do.
It's unsustainable. It's anti-middle class. It's anti-working families. It's absolutely unsustainable. May Mr. Skeffington rest in peace. I'm a member of the same profession, and I felt very badly when I heard the news.
Very smart lawyer.
When I heard the news of his passing, I felt very badly about it. And at the end of the day, prayers to his family. He was a brilliant lawyer. He invented these moral obligation bonds. He invented the lease back that you just talked about, and he was very innovative in his thinking. Well, the air is out of the room now.
To the detriment of the taxpayer.
Absolutely, and the air is out of the room. Let's just, I'm not even going in the past. The convention center is a great example. Mr. Skeffington was involved in that as well. It's a ridiculous proposal. It's ill-conceived. It's ridiculous. And look at the people out there. Talk to the people. Talk to the voters. Talk to the taxpayers. Overwhelming support against this idea.
Yeah, Convention Center Authority. The taxpayers never once got to say yes or no to that. Do you understand that?
Well,
they never once got a vote. And that's $750 million. Now they're trying to do the same thing with this Paw Sox Stadium. It's $250 million. So there's $1 billion on our backs that we will never have gotten a vote on.
And
Just
that's
wrong.
and that's the thing. And I want to thank you. And because I don't think a lot of us would have known about the convention center, but for the Republican Policy Group under your leadership's, your requests for records, uncovering how much of a fleecing that was. And it's a very fair comparison, not just because it was the same attorney involved, but it's a very fair comparison because people don't realize how much money we're losing on that quasi-public agency.
Think about what we could do with $1 billion too. Maybe we wouldn't have to talk about tolling everything in Rhode Island.
Right, absolutely. New taxes.
Think about what $1 billion could do for our school buildings, our roads, our bridges, a lot of stuff. And now, you mentioned it before, then there's 38 studios. There's another 75 million that kind of expanded to 85, 100 million. Again, Mr. Skeffington, the moral obligation bond is involved in that. But again, did the taxpayers get to vote on that one? We have a pattern.
We do.
We have a pattern. Same with the tolling proposal. We have a pattern, and it's never good for taxpayers.
It's never good for taxpayers, and that's why the taxpayers is a common thread. The taxpayers deserve an investigation. They deserve an investigation into a tolling plan that would
thorough study.
and also a study as to what happened to 38 studios.
Right. I put in an amendment to the budget trying to get an investigation. I think the people seriously deserve to understand what happened in 38 studios. Who had their hands in that pot of money, right? And I do not know, and I heartily object to the fact that nobody seems interested in finding out who did it, why they did it, how they did it, what they got out of it. I think taxpayers who are footing the bill deserve to get the answers. We may disagree on whether we continue to pay the bonds or not, but we should not disagree on the sunshine of a good investigation.
And there was hope there. There was hope there when Speaker Mattiello took over in March of 2014. There was hope that there would be an investigation. But the second that the Oversight Committee, which is for that reason, for investigations, tried to subpoena people, it was shut down.
Shut down.
So I have a lot of problems with that.
My
We need
amendment
answers.
was shut down in 20 seconds this year. And on that, I'm going to shut you down for just a little bit of a break. We'll be right back.
How many times do Providence pensioners have to be threatened with forced penury before somebody calls the cops? Are you kidding me? It was there, again, just this week. In black and white on the pages of Projo, it was reported that the financial performance of the Providence Pension Fund in the year just ended was abysmal. Okay, the numbers were all there, but that's not exactly what the article said. Instead, it quoted General Treasurer Seth Magaziner as allowing that 2.2% growth against a 7.4% target was actually pretty good. Other experts were quoted as saying that similar performance was turned in similar funds around the nation. Is that supposed to make our failure seem good? At least Arlene Violet tried to sound the alarm in her editorial on the same subject in the Valley Breeze. She cited the newly instituted GASB 68 accounting regulations now in effect. Using the new system, the unfunded liability for Providence pensioners is not the $6.8 billion Seth Magaziner was so proud of, but more like $9 billion plus. This is a mega problem. The details of the shortfall are getting more attention from the press, thank God. But we have still seen no elected official, including the General Treasurer, with the intestinal fortitude to step up and do something about it. Do they fear another lawsuit from the public service unions that will just dilute any measures they manage to take? Or are they just using the good old-fashioned ostrich approach on this disaster? Are you kidding me?
What do I stand for? What do I stand for? Most nights I don't know anymore.
Welcome back. Today we're talking with Chairman Brandon Bell, Chairman of the Rhode Island Republican Party.
That's right.
We've handled the national level, we've handled some of the state level. I want to talk a little bit about local issues, local policy issues. You know, so much that we do in the State House really hurts communities. If an interest group can't get done what they want at the local group, they run to the State House and they get us to pass a bill. And nothing is more instructive of that than what's been happening in our fire districts. And I know the people know that I've been really involved in Coventry, which has had some really significant problems. The highest taxed fire districts in the state, the people are just asking for some relief. Nobody's against firefighters. Everybody wants to be protected. But on the other hand, there's only so much you can ask the average family to give, right? They've got their own bills. They've got their own bills and their own challenges. You're from Cumberland.
I live in Cumberland. I've resided there with my wife and children for the last 15 years now.
Okay, so you're a Cumberland resident. And recently, you consolidated your fire districts. I got to tell you, my son lives up there. And for years now, he's been complaining about how high his fire taxes are. They are high in Cumberland because your fire districts only give fire suppression. You also have a private ambulance that's supplied by the taxpayers through their property taxes. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you consolidated, and I think everybody thinks that when you consolidate, you do it to save money.
That's not what happened. That's not at all what happened. As a matter of fact, I just saw my tax bill 2 weeks ago. It went up. And this is after the unified fire district came together. So how is that possible? The legislation was horrible. It was a bad idea. It was rushed, as many things are up at the State House. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, Rep., we are in a position right now where we have to unring the bell.
Hard to unring a bell.
Very hard to unring a bell.
Trust me, very hard to unring a bell.
You know that from Coventry. And so when you look at it from the perspective of consolidation, that's not always the answer. Not the way in which it was done with this fire district board, and with trying to consolidate the various positions. It's raised my tax bill. I could say that right to the camera. It has raised my tax bill. I think my tax bill went up $200.
Yeah.
It's not part of my property taxes.
They consolidated 4 districts. You would have expected significant savings from the duplication, the overlap. I think they saved $50,000.
I'm not sure.
A drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
A drop in the bucket. And actually the contract, now it's only a 1-year contract that they signed, but my understanding is it kind of picked out the highest price items from all of the other 4 and put them into one.
And so, just so you know, the budget in Cumberland is approximately $80 million, give or take a couple million here and there, which unfortunately has been ignored.
It's only money.
It's only money, right? And so, at the end of the day, that $80 million does not go to the fire districts, or to the newly consolidated fire district. It's completely separate.
Yes, that's right. You get a property tax bill and you get a fire tax bill.
Yeah.
And it's a significant bill. It hurts families.
It's very significant.
And I know that you have is a town councilman up there, a good Republican town councilman. His name is Art Lambie, who is really trying to say, wait a minute, we can save money. We should have saved money. If you did it right, you would have saved money. And he's trying to fight the good fight up there.
He is, and this is how he got involved in on the town council, or why he ran for town council. One of the fire districts, I believe he was the head of one of the fire districts, and in northern Cumberland. And he got involved by saying, hey, our taxes are out of line here. And so he ran on that platform, and now as a town councilor, he's still fighting that fight, and we're lucky to have him, just like your area is, Coventry is lucky to have him.
Well, and I encourage people in Cumberland who are looking at their bill with chagrin to get in touch with Mr. Lambie and give him your support. And people all over Rhode Island to pay attention, because these things really affect your wallet.
No doubt.
And that gets me to getting involved in the party. We have an election coming up in about another year. We're going to be looking for candidates to step up at the end, at least by the end of June of 2016, which is really only about 11 months away.
Right.
We need good candidates to step up who will advocate for the average family out there, for the average taxpayer. How do they do that?
They do that. You can get involved with your local town committees.
How do they find their local town committees?
So fortunately, as part of our infrastructure at the Rhode Island GOP, we're starting to consolidate in our infrastructure ri.gop. We're very fortunate to have the domain name that is our party. And so in going there,
so it's not .com, .org, it's .gop.
.gop, and it's a very exciting development that the RNC spent a lot of money on to try to help organizations within
make it
various
easier
states
for people to find us.
Make it easy for people to find us, make it easier for people to find activities, events, sign up for candidate recruitment, campaign management. It has so many different aspects to it, and so by going to ri.gop, you can find your local town or city committee, and most towns and cities in the state of Rhode Island do have a Republican committee.
And they meet every month?
They meet every month. Usually in the summer it might be a little bit lighter, and then there are activities within those months that coordinate with the town. For example, in Cranston, I believe there's St. Mary's Feast, and I know that the Republican City Committee in Cranston is doing something around that event. This weekend, today I believe, Burrville is doing a pig roast, the Republican committee up there.
Yes.
So there's so many activities, so many ways to get involved. I ran for town council in 2006, and while I was active, I was on the planning board in Cumberland, I went right to our Cumberland Republican town chairman, and I said, I'm interested in running. And she explained to me what I needed to do and helped me along the way, and it got me very involved with my town committee.
If somebody steps up, they're not just left
That's right.
by themselves, right? You help them, you train them.
And that's the role of the state party as well, and that's what we're going to do with legislative candidates. Candidate recruitment, education, campaign management, assistance, just having
somebody to bounce ideas off of.
A kitchen cabinet, if you will, and then helping connect those folks to our electeds. Just because you're running in Cumberland for a state rep seat, Cumberland-Woonsocket, that doesn't mean that you don't have access to Rep Morgan and some of her ideas. And so
I'm always willing to help.
That she is, and that you are, I should say. And I believe that that's where we need to connect our caucus in the State House and protect our caucus, to get reelected, but to also add those.
We need to grow it because our ideas, like eliminating the social income tax, it was our idea. Yeah. Income tax on Social Security. Our ideas can float to the top faster if we have more people.
That's right. I mean, reducing the corporate tax.
It's not just people who want to run; it's also people who want to help.
Yeah.
So many ways for you to get involved. You can be a campaign manager, you can be a campaign worker. A candidate needs that support. And just getting in touch with RIGOP.
RI.GOP.
RI.GOP.
Which hopefully is on the screen right now. And I encourage you, contact me. Contact Gina Catalano. Contact others in the party.
Do you have a phone number?
We do. The party offices, the number there is 732-8282.
That's an easy one, 732-8282. Write it down.
And email contact@ri.gop. You could Facebook us at Rhode Island Republican Party. Contact me directly by bbell@ri.gop or on Facebook, Brandon S. Bell. There's so many ways to get in touch.
And we need you. Rhode Island needs you. Right? Average families who are struggling in today's economy need good people to step forward and get involved. So I hope you will.
Please.
And thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Rep. Morgan.
And so it begins. It is the season of presidential politics. The American version of representative democracy was crafted by a relatively small group of smart men who gathered in Philadelphia with the express purpose of solving all the problems that were created when the Articles of Confederation were created. And they did that. So after these many years, we again are participating in a process that will result in someone replacing the current president, Barack Hussein Obama II. Back in 1787, those allowed to vote constituted a mere 10% of the population.
the Constitution did not mention who could vote, leaving the issue up to the states. Originally, the voting population was made up of property-owning men who were the heads of households who were expected to fairly represent their family interests. At the Constitutional Convention, James Madison famously quoted as saying, who could vote excluded the American Indians, the black population, women, indentured servants, and propertyless mob of sailors, vagrants, day laborers, and criminals. Oh boy, that took out a few folks. Basically, you had to be a property-owning man to be in the discussion of who should get elected. Now, the 15th Amendment to the Constitution gave all black citizens voting rights in 1870, and the 19th Amendment gave the vote to women in 1920. Now, the voting age was lowered from 21 to 18 by the 26th Amendment, which took effect on July 1st of 1971, and so the Constitution stands to this day. So now we are watching our two-party system produce candidates who believe that they can convince enough people to vote for them to claim the presidency. I wish them luck. So far, the Republican Party has produced a plethora of announced runners. When you let that many people into the arena, you can expect a windfall profit for the multiple media outlets and firms whose profit margins are affected by the political process. Countless Americans are working diligently to tell the story of why one of these candidates is qualified to live in the White House. But I will admit to looking forward to the process where we all listen and read about what each of these folks thinks the future would be like if we voted for them. In a lively debate it will be. I wonder if we did a survey of Americans and showed them pictures of all these candidates, how many names would they get right? When our current president was inaugurated on January 20th of 2009, the Congress was also of his party. That lasted only until the next election cycle when the Republican Party won the House back. Today, both houses of Congress are the opposition party, making life that much more interesting for our president. But that's it for him. He has to leave to spend the rest of his life being escorted around by Secret Service agents and making millions giving speeches. But he can get back in the White House if he can talk his spouse into a run. I can't imagine what life would be like for former President Bill Clinton if by some miracle Hillary Clinton gets elected. No more millions of forgiving speeches for either of the Clintons. Sounds like a good reason not to run. Let's think about what we would like our presidential candidates to be telling us about their presidency. What about the role of the president has as the commander-in-chief of the armed services? Our world has been and continues to be at war with itself. Our president has to be able to understand the complexities of war and to fight one. We spent billions of dollars creating and deploying weapon systems that we believe will be effective against the current threat to American interests, whatever those interests are thought to be. Over the course of our history, we have chosen men to be president because they had put on a uniform and served their country. But more recently, we have not done that, and there's an argument to be made that our world has become more unstable because we have had leaders with little experience in the world of international conflict. Americans should realize that their future prosperity will be determined by how well America competes in the world of commerce. We need to be thinking new things up, producing, selling, and creating better than all the other nations we are in competition with. Meanwhile, there are fanatics living in the world who believe that American dominance can be overcome by force. The latest version of militancy is the Islamic State. There are people roaming the planet who believe that blowing themselves up for a cause will make a difference. And as we need to ask all of our candidates for the presidency how they will handle the myriad of challenges they will face, and we need to assess their ability to tell the truth to us. Thank you for watching, and God bless.